Good day, dear second year students. Today we are going to start with a new short story. The name of the short story is The Luncheon, and the writer is Guy de Maupassant. Luncheon is a word used for a meal taken with ceremony. It means it is a ceremonious meal, lunch. So let us start with the short story. It's a very interesting short story filled with humor, filled with irony. I caught sight of her at the play, and in answer to her beckoning, I went over during the interval and sat down beside her. It was long since I had seen her, and if someone had not mentioned her name, I hardly think I would have recognized her. She addressed me brightly. Now, the author is sitting at a play. He's enjoying a play. Play means drama, and he caught sight of a lady whom he did not recognize very easily. But the lady, she recognized her very much, and she approached him in a very friendly manner. Well, sorry, it was long since I had seen her, and if someone had not mentioned her name, I hardly think I would have recognized her. She addressed me brightly. Now, she said, well, it's many years since we first met. How time does fly. We are none of us getting any younger. Do you remember the first time I saw you? You asked me to luncheon. Now, this lady is meeting the author as if they are very well known people, as if they are friendly. Did I remember? It was 20 years ago and I was living in Paris. Now, when the lady said that I know you and you invited me for a lunch, the author started thinking about the incident. And now, pressurizing his mind, his memory, he is brooding over the incident. He says, it was 20 years ago and I was living in Paris. I had a tiny apartment in the Latin Quarter overlooking a cemetery, and I was earning barely enough money to keep body and soul together. Now, the author is remembering an incident of 20 years ago. And he says that at that time he was living at Paris and his income was very meager. His income was very less, and we can see the fact that he was living in a quarter overlooking a cemetery. Cemetery means a graveyard. If a colony is besides a cemetery, it means that poor people are living in it because the rate is less. And I was earning barely enough money to keep body and soul together. Means he was a very poor man, and barely enough money was earned by him that he could eat 2 times meal. She had read a book of mine and had written to me about it. I answered thanking her, and presently I received from her yet another letter saying that she was passing through Paris and would like to have a chat with me. Now she was the reader of his book. So that was the only basis of their acquaintance, and she said that I am passing through Paris and I would like to meet you. But her time was limited, and the only free moment she had was on the following Thursday. She was spending the morning at Luxembourg, and would I give her a little luncheon at Foyot's afterwards? Now you see, she said that the author invited her for a lunch, but the fact is that she imposed the invitation. It was a self invitation. She invited herself on behalf of the author. So she said that I'm passing through Paris and I want to meet you, and it would be good if you give me a lunch. And she asked for a lunch at Foyot's, and Foyot's was a very, very expensive restaurant in Paris. Foyot's is a restaurant at which the French senators eat. Now you see, it is not a common restaurant, it's a restaurant where senators eat. And it was far beyond my means that I had never even thought of going there. So he was a poor man and he had not even had a thought because he knew that he could not afford the charges. But I was flattered, and I was too young to have learned to say no to a woman. Now, why was the author flattered? Because some lady has asked to lunch with him, and at that time he was very young and not much experience, so he did not know how to say no. Few men, I may add, learn this until they are too old to make it of any consequence to a woman what they say. I had 80 francs, gold francs, to last me the rest of the month, and a modest luncheon should not cost more than 15. Now he started calculating. And as we all know that he was a poor man, his income was not much. So he started counting his money. So he calculated that he had 80 francs. And 80 francs would have lasted him the whole month. And he said that if I give a very normal lunch to that lady, it will cost 15 francs. If I cut out coffee for the next 2 weeks, I could manage well enough. Now, you see, he has started calculating and he says that, okay, I can afford to give that lady a good lunch, but he will have to cut the coffee for next 2 weeks in order to balance the amount. I answered that I would meet my friend by correspondence at Foyot on Thursday, 12:30. Now, the arrangement was made and it was settled that he would meet the lady at Foyot on Thursday, 12:30. She was not so young as I expected and in appearance imposing rather than attractive. And no wonder she was imposing, and we had seen that really she is imposing because she had imposed a lunch on the author. She was, in fact, a woman of 40, a charming age, but not one that excites a sudden and devastating passion. And as expected, she was not, against expectations, she was not a young lady, and she was a woman of 40. She gave me the impression of having more teeth, white and large and even, than were necessary for any practical purpose. It means, now you see the touch of humor, the language. She gave the impression of having more teeth than needed. So she was smiling and laughing unnecessarily. She was talkative, but since she seemed inclined to talk about me, I was prepared to be attentive listener. I was startled when the bill of fare was brought, for the prices were a great deal higher than I had anticipated, but she reassured me. Now, you see, when the menu card was brought, the author was startled. He was shocked because the prices were far more than he expected. But she reassured him, the lady reassured him, means gave him an assurance that I never eat anything for luncheon. See the statement and remember this statement through the short story. So, the lady seemed to have read the look in the eyes of the author, and she said that I never eat anything for luncheon. Oh, don't say that, I said generously. Now the author says, okay, don't say that. Please have something for lunch. I never eat more than one thing. Now, you see the difference between the two statements. First of all, she said, I never eat anything for luncheon. And a moment later, she says, I never eat more than one thing. I think people eat far too much nowadays. A little fish, perhaps. I wonder if they have any salmon. Now, first statement was that I never eat anything for luncheon. The second statement was that I never eat more than one thing, and that one thing was very expensive. She was demanding for salmon, a kind of fish which is very expensive and which is all the more expensive when it is not in the season. So, well, it was early in the year for salmon and it was not on the bill of fare. First of all, it was off season order and then it was not there in the menu card. But I asked the waiter if there was any. Yes, a beautiful salmon has just come in. And it was first they had. I ordered it for my guest. The waiter asked if she would have something while it was being cooked. Now you see, the waiters, they are bent upon asking the customers for ordering more and more. They are trained like that. So it was not there on the menu card, but the waiter said that yes, he can make salmon available for her, and while it is being cooked, he said that he could bring something in between. No, she answered, I never eat more than one thing, unless you have a little caviar. I never mind caviar. Now, it is also a type of fish. Now, she says, I never eat more than one thing unless you have this thing. My heart sank a little. Now, poor author, his heart has started sinking. Why? Because of the high prices of the dishes of this hotel. I knew I could not have afforded caviar, but I could not very well tell her that. Now it is um, discourteous to say that I can't afford this dish. So, but his heart was sinking. But he could not tell her. I told the waiter by all means to bring caviar. For myself, I chose the cheapest dish on the menu, that was a mutton chop. Now, naturally, in order to balance the amount, he chose to eat the cheapest of all the dishes. So, he ordered mutton chop. Now you notice what the lady says. I think you are unwise to eat meat. She said, I don't know how you can expect to work after eating heavy things like chops. I don't believe in overloading my stomach. Now notice the irony. The lady is overloading her stomach, is preparing to overload her stomach, but she is saying that the author is a person who is overloading his stomach. Then came the question of drink. I never drink anything for luncheon, she said. Neither do I answered promptly. Now, naturally, the author, who is very worried about the fares, so he also said that even I don't drink anything except white wine. She proceeded as though I had not spoken. These French white wines are so light, they are wonderful for digestion. Now, you see, she said that I don't drink anything for lunch but except white wine. And she says that white wine is good for digestion. What would you like? I asked, hospitable still, but not exactly effusive. Water. She gave me a bright and amicable flash of her white teeth. My doctor won't let me drink anything but champagne. I fancy I turned a little trifle pale. I ordered half a bottle. I mentioned casually that my doctor had absolutely forbidden me to drink champagne. Now, poor author, worried about the payment. So, he says that my doctor has absolutely forbidden him to drink champagne. What are you going to drink then? Water. She ate the caviar and she ate the salmon. She talked gaily of art and literature and music, but I wondered what the bill would come to. Now you see the difference. The lady is busy eating the salmon, busy eating the caviar, but the author is busy worrying about the amount kept in his purse, whether it would be enough or not. When my mutton chop arrived, she took me quite seriously to task. Thank you. That is enough for this class. We will continue in another class.